MG's entry-level SUV, the ZS, makes a much more credible statement in this second generation form, especially when equipped with frugal full hybrid power. Do you really need a pricier small crossover than this? This MG ZS Hybrid Plus makes proper petrol-electric power significantly more affordable in a small SUV, and here we're going to test it. It's difficult to remember now what a fledgling brand MG was in the UK prior to 2017, when the first generation version of the company's ZS compact crossover was originally launched. More than any other, it was the model that properly established this new era Chinese marque here, and over 102,000 examples of the Mark I model subsequently found British buyers. Even in its last year on sale, it outsold rivals from more established brands like the Dacia Duster, the Skoda Kamiq and the SEAT Arona. Building on that success is this second generation ZS, launched in early autumn 2024. Unlike its predecessor, it won't be available in full EV form. The old ZS EV will be replaced by a crossover model based on the MG4 hatch. Instead, ZS sales will primarily be based around the Hybrid Plus model that we look at here, though this model also comes in unelectrified base SE petrol form if you need a lower sticker price. So, should you consider this ZS if you're shopping in this segment? You'll need the industry's most comprehensive review, the car and driving road test, if you're to properly decide. Now that MG has moved its EV sales in this sector away from the ZS range and onto a dedicated separate model, going forward, the brand primarily wants you to consider the ZS as a hybrid, though it does also offer it with a conventional 115 PS 1.5 litre petrol unit for those on a tight budget. Our recent experience with the company's petrol-electric tech in the MG3 Super Mini convinced us that it's the hybrid powertrain you'll probably want in this car, and that's what we're trying here. As you get underway, there's more of an EV-like driving experience than you'd usually get from a hybrid small SUV of this kind. Bear in mind, we're talking about a full hybrid powertrain here, not a mild hybrid unit like the kind of thing you'll find in this class fitted in, say, a Ford Puma or a Kia Stonic. A mild hybrid engine can never solely run the engine on battery power. This MG's proper full hybrid engine, the kind of thing you also get in this segment in, say, a Toyota Yaris Cross or hybrid versions of the Renault Captur and Nissan Juke, can do that, and it makes a lot of difference to the way this car drives. More difference than is usual, actually. In the Toyota, Renault and Nissan models just mentioned, you quickly notice that it's hardly any time before the engine ahead of you springs into life. In a ZS Hybrid Plus, it's a little different because its powertrain is engineered rather differently. First, because instead of its electric motor being merely an assistant to a petrol engine, in this case, to some extent at least, it's the other way round. It can be that way because the battery in use here, though still tiny by EV standards, is at 1.83 kilowatt hours in size, considerably larger than it usually is with a small hybrid of this sort, which means that the green EV icon on the instrument screen stays on a lot more of the time at suburban speeds. One thing that might surprise you about this front-mounted drivetrain is just how powerful it is. That electric motor develops 134 brake horsepower, and in combination with the 101 brake horsepower 1.5 litre four-cylinder petrol engine it's paired with, means this ZS Hybrid Plus has a rather considerable 194 brake horsepower to play with. To put that into perspective, mainstream versions of the much pricier Toyota Yaris Cross Hybrid have just 114 brake horsepower. Small wonder that this MG is so much quicker than its Japanese rival, making 62 miles an hour in just 8.7 seconds, 2.5 seconds quicker than that Yaris, on the way to 104 miles an hour. Though from behind the wheel, the perceived difference in performance between the two cars isn't quite as great as that increment might suggest. To replicate that quoted acceleration stat, you will of course have had to engage the most eager of the three provided drive modes, Sport. The other two are Normal and Eco. by which time the green EV light on the instrument display will long ago have been replicated by an HEV icon indicating that the engine is in play. That combustion unit integrates itself quite smoothly, unless you press the throttle into its final third of travel, at which point this MG feels right out of its comfort zone, its drivetrain mooing like a heifer in heat. But you won't suffer this refinement affliction unless you drive the car in the kind of manner a typical owner never would, and you quickly learn to work around it. The base SE petrol version of this ZS still uses one of the oldest and most inefficient engines it's possible to buy, so the sophistication of the power plant in this Hybrid Plus model is something of a pleasant shock. That little battery can't actually take the car more than around half a mile without troubling the engine, but that's not really the point of a proper hybrid. Instead, the idea is that the electric motor should frequently cut in around town to aid efficiency, and in this MG it does that so often that you sometimes feel as if you're driving an EV. At these lower speeds, the powertrain always defaults to a full EV setting. Then, when the battery is depleted, it switches to a series mode that sees the petrol engine quietly wake up to power a generator that tops up the battery with electricity. Surprisingly, given the larger battery in play here, there's no EV button like you get in a Yaris Cross to force a battery-driven drive setting around town. But unlike with most other small hybrids, you can select from 3 levels of brake regeneration to keep the lithium-ion cells topped up. The fiercest of these, high, slows the car off throttle quite noticeably. Get beyond the city limits and the powertrain automatically switches to a parallel hybrid setting, which is where for the first time the petrol engine sends its power direct to the wheels, in combination with the electric motor via an auto gearbox. That auto, rather curiously, has only 3 speeds. MG says that makes it more reactive. Predictably, the handling isn't particularly reactive. You won't be choosing this ZS if you want the kind of rewarding, nimble feel you get in this segment in, say, a hybrid Nissan Juke. The light steering and the limited grip levels from the standard fit Gitti tyres mitigate against that, but few B-segment SUV customers care about that sort of thing. Of more interest will be the reasonably settled ride, plus there's also the fact that despite the affordable sticker price, this car comes complete with adaptive and intelligent cruise control and a very complete suite of driver assistance features, including a number that you'd have to pay extra for with rivals. Refinement's okay, at town speeds anyway, unless you count the rather noisy Climate Fan, but you'll notice more road noise on the highway. This front-driven model has no particular off-road ability, of course, or the ride height necessary to facilitate it, though MG does fit hill descent control, which might be useful on a steep, slippery driveway. Perhaps, but extreme conditions aren't really the kind of thing this ZS was designed for. Like its predecessor, it's a resolutely real-world compact family crossover. Just, these days, a slightly more appealing one. The original ZS had very much a bargain basement look that increasingly didn't fit with the kind of company that these days makes forward-thinking designs like the Cyberster and the MG4. This second generation ZS is a much more satisfying looking thing, borrowing cues from second generation versions of the MG3 Super Mini and the larger HS SUV. It's a B-segment SUV, but quite a large one, measuring in at 4,430mm, which is a full 107mm longer than the previous generation model. To give you some perspective, that makes this second generation ZS 86mm longer than a rival Dacia Duster and only 52mm shorter than a Skoda Kamiq in the class above. To emphasise the SUV vibe, there are subtle silver roof rails and a broad, lower silver-trimmed panel separating black plastic-clad wheel arches housing rims that'll be either 17 inches or, as in this case, 18 inches in size. At the front, the LED headlights smear around the chamfered corners of the car and sit well above this deep, distinctive front grille that's flanked by narrow boomerang-shaped intake panels on either side. The usual octagonal MG badge features on the nose, and there's a silver lower skid plate panel to once more remind you of the kind of car you've chosen. At the rear, where a previous owner might notice the lower roofline, this ZS is 18mm shorter than its predecessor. MG has resisted the current trend for full-width light bars, but these tail lamps have full LED illumination. There's a dinky little wiper, a subtle roof spoiler, and silvered finishing around the lower part of the bumper that extends around squared-off exhaust outlets. At just over 1.4 tonnes in weight, this MG isn't especially light by segment standards, but it's around 200 kilograms lighter than a comparable small EV crossover would be. What you'll probably really want to know, though, is whether this second generation ZS is now more Waitrose than Aldi inside. So let's take a look. Well, it's a big improvement over the old car for sure, with splashes of silverwork, 4 stylised trapezoidal vents, an Art Deco aircraft style gear selector, brushed effect door card inlays, sporty red trimmed mats and a squared off steering wheel. Despite all this worthy effort, if we're honest, most obvious rivals still feel just that bit nicer in terms of cabin ambience, but you could now switch into a ZS from one of them without feeling miserly. That's because MG has really narrowed the gap in perceived cabin quality, not only with the obvious things that strike you when you take a seat, but also with the little details, like the way the dash top's now decorated with faux stitching, or the smart matte finish that features on the shortcut buttons beneath the touchscreen, which made it all the more surprising that something as basic as reach adjustment on the steering wheel was forgotten on early versions of this Mark II model, like the car we're trying here. MG says it's going to deal with this issue later in production. The rejuvenated ambience is obviously helped a great deal by the big step forward in cabin screen tech, which MG has embraced wholeheartedly. Perhaps too wholeheartedly, you might think, if you don't happen to like the arcade video game style graphics of the new 7-inch digital instrument cluster. There's lots of information on it, speed, efficiency, drive modes, trip data and so on, plus tyre pressures, an energy flow monitor and a power meter. You even get a digital rev counter, which is unusual to find in a hybrid, but sadly not the facility to display the kind of full screen mapping you'll find with some rivals. And the display has a bit of an irritating habit of automatically reverting to a driver assistance graphic at cruising speeds, overriding any preference for more useful information. Lots of such information now resides on this centre screen. To suit the modern trend, this central infotainment monitor has grown to 12.3 inches in size and features plenty. Standard built-in navigation, a reversing camera and App Connect, Apple CarPlay and Android Auto connectivity, though that smartphone mirroring unfortunately remains wired rather than wireless. As usual, the home screen is split into customizable widget sections with a shortcut function menu down the monitor's right-hand frame. We're less keen on the fact that this monitor now has to house all the climate controls. Many rival brands are at last realising the safety implications of this and returning to the provision of physical climate switchgear. As it is, unless you learn how to alter temperature or fan speed via the provided steering wheel shortcut buttons, climate change requires the need to look away from the road to find the appropriate touch button and switch away from whatever it was that you were previously looking at. The monitor's surface is also angled slightly upwards, which means it's more prone to reflections. This is one of those SUV crossovers that sits you noticeably higher than the hatchback it's based upon. And though the positioning is hardly commanding, it does give you good all-round vision, hampered only by chunky rear C-pillars, though on this top variant you won't be much bothered by that because a 360-degree surround view camera system comes included. This top spec trim level also gets you this faux leather upholstery, though it's unlikely to convince anyone that it's the real thing. Top trim gets you electric seat adjustment too, but because, as we said, the wheel only goes up and down, not in and out, it can still be a little difficult to find a truly comfortable driving position. Nor are we totally convinced that MG has solved all of its build quality issues. Look at the amount of play you get from this gear shifter, for instance. On the plus side, cabin storage provision's quite generous, certainly more so than in a rival Dacia Duster. The glove box and door bins are both big, plus there are two shallow trays next to the gear selector, a useful deep cubby under the central armrest, and the usual cup holders, which have a useful ratcheting stay between them so that you can alter the shape for different sizes of cups. There are both USB-A and USB-C ports either side of a centrally placed 12-volt socket, so unlike in a rival VW Group model, you won't have to mess around with unsightly converter leads. And you also get a recess above the glove box and ticket clips in the sun visors. Time to take a seat in the rear. With the increased size of this second generation model, you'd think that improvements would have been made here, which by and large is true. The bench doesn't slide, nor does the backrest recline, but there's pretty much the same sort of leg space back here as you'd find in a more expensive, lower mid-sized crossover from the next class up, like, say, a Nissan Qashqai or a SEAT Arona, cars that are considerably more expensive than this one. You can push your feet well under the front seats, and headroom's impressive too. Obviously, as ever with this class of car, fitting in a third middle-seated adult is going to be a squash, and this relatively high centre tunnel doesn't help. But this Mark II design's 1.8 metre width means that it'd be possible without too much discomfort, should that be absolutely necessary. The rear Isofix child seat attachment points are a little buried between the upper and lower seat cushions, but they're easier to get at than the zipped ones in a rival Duster. There's no central armrest, so no cup holders, but a USB port's provided, and you get big rear quarter-light windows, so it feels quite airy in this space. With such a spacious back seat on offer, you might expect a generously sized boot too. Lift the hatch though, and it turns out that the 443 litre space provided, the same with both of the available engines, is actually 5 litres less than was offered before. Still, that's above average by class standards, 43 litres more than a Duster hybrid, for instance, and you access the space via quite a low loading lip. There's minimal wheel arch intrusion and a bit of extra storage space below the adjustable height false floor. There are 2 bag hooks, 4 tie downs and a left-hand light, plus netted wide recesses on either side so you can get awkward items like pushchairs in widthwise. If you need to take lengthy baggage, you'll be disappointed to find that there's no ski hatch or convenient 40-20-40 rear seat back split, so long items like skis will have to go on the roof. With everything folded, up to 1,457 litres of space is available, which is 82 litres more than the old car. Value is what will continue to sell this ZS, though it's worth reflecting that the starting price of this Hybrid Plus version, as we filmed in early 2025, around £22,000 for the base variant, is a full £3,500 more than an equivalent version of the mechanically identical MG3 Hybrid Plus Super Mini, which isn't all that much smaller. MG also offers an even more affordable un-electrified version of this car, the 115 PS 1.5 litre SE petrol variant, which is only offered with manual transmission, and from launch was priced at around £19,500. We reckon though that it's worth finding the extra £2,500 for this Hybrid Plus model if you can manage it. The ZS Hybrid Plus is front-driven only and auto transmission only, and unlike the base petrol derivative, which only comes in SE form, is available in 2 trim levels, SE and, as in this case, Trophy, with this range-topping Trophy variant priced at around £24,500 from launch. Like all MGs, this one is supported by a growing network of over 160 dealers. The most obvious budget brand rival to this petrol-electric ZS is Dacia's Duster, which at first glance seems to undercut this MG. But when you look closer, you'll find that the kind of frugal hybrid-powered Duster that's most equivalent to this MG would require around £25,000 from you. This ZS is better equipped than its Romanian rival too. It's a similar story with the Citroën C3 Aircross, which at first glance also seems to slightly undercut this MG. But if you look closer, you'll see that a C3 Aircross in comparable hybrid form would cost you slightly more, around £23,500, the same kind of sum as you'd need for a hybrid-powered Vauxhall Frontiera. Another budget brand player, KGM, can't offer hybrid power in its Corando, which costs over £25,000 in its base form, nor can former budget brand player Skoda, whose Kamiq cost from around £24,000 as we filmed. ZS money would get you something mainstream Korean, like a Kia Stonic or a Hyundai Bayon, but it wouldn't have full hybrid power. For more mainstream small full hybrid crossovers, a Toyota Yaris Cross or a Renault Captur Hybrid, for instance, well, you need to think about paying around £25,000 upwards. If, having considered all of that, you decide that it is this MG that you really want, then you're going to need to know just how generous the Chinese brand has been with standard specs, so let's take a look at that now. Even with base SE trim, your ZS will come with full LED lighting front and rear parking sensors, a rear view camera, automatic headlights, rain sensing wipers, keyless entry and an alarm. As for driving stuff, well, you get 3 drive modes and 3 brake regeneration settings plus adaptive cruise control. Inside, standard ZS kit includes a 7-inch virtual driver display and media stuff's taken care of by a 12.3-inch HD infotainment display with navigation and live services, plus a 6-speaker DAB audio system and Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. This Trophy Hybrid Plus model costs £2,500 more than an entry-level ZS Hybrid Plus and upgrades the base SE version 17-inch Valiant alloy wheels to larger 18-inch Sabre rims. Plus, Trophy spec also gets you rear privacy glass, leather-style upholstery, heat for the front seats and steering wheel, a 360-degree surround view camera and 6-way electrically adjustable driver's seat with lumbar support. Across the range, options are few, but bear in mind that unless you choose your ZS in the only standard colour, solid Arctic white, you'll be paying MG £545 more for your chosen paint shade, or £595 more if you want dynamic red. On to safety and driver assist features. With both trim levels, the brand includes, as standard, its very comprehensive MG Pilot package, which includes active emergency braking with pedestrian and bicycle detection. Plus there's forward collision warning, lane keep assist, lane departure warning, rear cross traffic alert and blind spot detection with lane change assist. The traffic sign recognition setup drives an intelligent speed limit assist feature, and there's also driver attention alert along with a traffic jam assist system which will virtually drive your ZS for you in urban queues. As you'd expect, there are also twin front, side and curtain airbags, all linked to an e-call system. As with the MG3, advanced smart features of the Hybrid Plus system include a drive and charge setup that allows the petrol engine to drive the wheels whilst also charging the battery through the generator. Now, you'll need to stay away from that feature to achieve the claimed best efficiency figures, 55.4 mpg on the combined cycle and 115 grams per kilometre of CO2. For reference, it's 64.2 miles to the gallon and 100 grams per kilometre for the MG3 Hybrid Plus Super Mini. Those figures are some way off those of hybrid segment rivals like Toyota's Yaris Cross and the hybrid Renault Captur, but those models are significantly less powerful. For reference, a closer competitor, Dacia's Duster Hybrid, also quite a lot less powerful, returns stats that are virtually identical to those of this MG. To achieve the stated figures, you'll obviously have to regularly select the provided Eco driving mode. The other two settings are Standard and Sport. For completion, we'll also give you the running cost figures for the base ZS SE petrol model, which are of course vastly less frugal. 43.5 mpg on the combined cycle and 145 grams per kilometre of CO2. For reference, an admittedly more expensive base Dacia Duster TCE 130 manages 51.3 mpg and 124 grams per kilometre, which gives you some idea of how far this MG is away from the class norm. All versions of this MG come with an impressive 7-year, 80,000 mile warranty as standard, which is better than most rival brands can offer. A rival Dacia Duster only gets 3 years of cover, but it does give you roadside assistance throughout that time. Roadside assistance with this MG runs out after a year. MG's full warranty isn't the only 7-year package available in this segment. Rival Kia offers a 7-year 100,000 mile package, but MG still reckons its deal is preferable because it's backed by full factory support throughout, whereas direct manufacturer support for rival warranties declines the longer they go on. In many cases, they don't go on too long. The warranty is fully transferable to future owners. Additionally, there's a 6-year factory warranty against rust, and as I just said, a year's breakdown cover is also part of the deal. The MG dealer network is growing all the time. The brand expects shortly to have around 160 outlets in the UK. At those outlets, a full digital service record of checks and maintenance provides the customer with complete transparency and full access to the service history of their vehicle. You'll be offered a range of MG servicing plans to spread the cost of maintenance for up to 7 years. But the cost, typically around £730 over 3 years, is quite expensive by segment standards. Insurance for this ZS Hybrid Plus is Group 22, that's 2 groups lower than the hybrid version of that rival Dacia Duster. Thanks to this MG's hybrid drivetrain, VED tax on this car is set at £180 for the 2nd year of ownership upwards. Residual values are expected to be between 51 and 53% after 3 years and 36,000 miles, which isn't quite as good as a Duster, but is similar to what you'd get from other mainstream brand models in this segment. The original MG ZS was cheap and well equipped, but frankly there weren't many other reasons to choose it. This replacement model will give competing brands far more to think about, or at least it will in this Hybrid Plus form. The alternative SE petrol version remains something of a step back into MG's past. Going forward, you might expect that ZS sales across the board would suffer for the lack of a full electric version, but perhaps not too much. For a lot of potential customers, this hybrid model would be a better choice than an EV. Compared to nearly all its direct compact SUV segment rivals, this ZS Hybrid Plus is cheaper, more spacious, better equipped and much more powerful. It's more frugal than most of them too. Now, if all of this had been delivered with the cheap-feeling cabin and little looks of the previous generation model, it still might not have been enough for sales success, but significant steps forward have been made in both directions. You'll still find many pricier segment rivals are more avant-garde to look at and sit in, but MG is closing the gap, creating here a small SUV you'd be unwise to ignore.